I turned 48 last week. Yeah, woo! It's getting a little surreal, actually, as the numbers get higher and higher. So as I get older, I found that around my birthday, I like to take on some kind of a challenge that makes me feel like, hey, yeah, I'm still alive. So yeah. So this year it was thanks to another friend of mine who actually achieved this already. It's the 100 push-up challenge. Has anybody heard of the 100 push-up challenge? Yeah, well, actually a lot of people, mostly guys. Yeah. So the way this works is you have to do 100 continuous push-ups without stopping, right? Okay, great. I don't know if you've tried this before, but I can tell you it's extremely difficult. It's not easy. So I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit anxious about just getting started, because you can imagine that this is not going to be easy, getting to the finish line. So what's the first thing I did? Like what most of us do, I went to the internet, and I got my mouse out, and I click on a link, right? I downloaded a schedule that showed me how day by day I can eventually get to that point where, in theory, I can do the 100 push-ups. And what happened was, all of a sudden, after I had this little bit of information, I was like, hey, this is doable. I think I can achieve this, right? So the metaphor or the example here is basically what happened that changed my perception. And it was basically, let's break it down really small. It was the click of a mouse, which is a very small gesture compared to my personal physical challenge that I had set up for myself. So that's my basic point here for this talk, is that a small first step could be the key to our success. It's very easy for us to get discouraged when we're faced with a large challenge or even just some task that we're excited about doing, but it's still so big. It's easy for us to get discouraged before we even begin. That's particularly true in my field, which is environmental science, and I've had ups and downs throughout my career where between the news and the professional briefings that I get, you just want to throw your hands up and say, that's it, we're up the creek, guys. But that can't be the end of the story, right? So if we hang in there, basically some kind of a small step can help carry us through to the end. Small steps are also good with dealing with the frailties of the human condition, our imperfections. And I don't know about you, but I suffer from some perfectionism, and it's been there for a really long time. It's kind of like my friend. But perfectionism urges us to try to control the entire process of whatever task we're taking on. Maybe the people around us, that's really bad. And then, of course, the final outcome. We want it to end up just the way we had imagined it when we began. That is a surefire way to undo your success. And also extremely frustrating for both you and the people around you. So that's not advisable. And taking a small step, or at least beginning in that way, keeps a perfectionist like myself in check. It helps us keep those imperfections kind of, it's hard to make them go away completely, but at least we can put them back in the corner and say, behave. It's time to play with other people. The other frailty that starting small helps us with is just the fact that we underestimate the size of problems. We see something and we say, oh, well, I'm going to do that, and just ambitiously jump right into it. And before we know it, we're worn out, we have no more energy, we're dismayed. And what happened? I mean, you can imagine New Year's resolutions, right? I think we all know that New Year's resolutions pretty much by about January 7th are kind of down the toilet, and that's it, right? So taking small steps helps us deal with the way we're going to interact with ourselves and the people around us in approaching these problems. I've long had a love for nature. I have a compassion for nature, and I get a lot of inspiration from that. Big picture of my niece. So what my niece is helping show is that nature can accomplish amazing things with small beginnings. And in this case, I want to talk about hormones. So hormones, a lot of people don't realize that they're released not just in parts per million concentrations in your blood to control your physiology and your entire body, but in parts per billion. parts per billion concentrations. So almost at the level of undetectable by equipment. So it's the test of our machinery, actually, to measure in parts per billion. And just with that type of a concentration, it, like I said, controls our physiology, but can take a child from an embryo to an infant, and obviously into, like us, into full-grown adults. So that's one example. The next example I'd like to talk about is Redwood Forests. Has anybody had the chance to visit in California? Yeah, awe-inspiring, right? Yeah. So basically, just a speck, just a touch of pollen can fertilize a seed that then grows in the ground, becomes a sapling, and eventually grows up into a 100-meter or higher tree that stands at 8 to 10 meters wide at the base. These are the biggest trees in the world. About 25 years ago, I was lucky enough to travel and stand in a forest of these trees. And you feel like you're standing in a fairy tale, and I mean, you feel extremely small and with these huge trees. So that's another example. Does anybody know what this is? Plankton, exactly. So plankton, there's two kinds, but they're both microscopic, and they form, this one is zooplankton, and they form the basis of the bottom of the trophic level in the oceanic ecosystem. They're basically the bottom of the food chain. And so these plankton, in particular the zooplankton, they're able to support 10 million species, up to 10 million species in the oceans, including the blue whale, which is 180 tons, 30 meters long, and the largest animal on the planet. So here we have the smallest creature supporting the largest creature. The other thing that the plant version of plankton do, which is phytoplankton, is that, especially in the springtime, when they're reproducing and forming massive 100, 200 kilometer wide clouds of plankton in the ocean, visible from the space station traveling overhead, is they produce 50 to 85% of the oxygen that we breathe on the planet. And so here we have something really tiny that basically is sustaining all life on the Earth. The last example in nature that I want to reference is geology, which is basically the master of small steps. It's definitely not in a hurry, so it has time to take the smallest of steps to achieve the greatest of things. And so, anybody want to guess what mountain this is? Everest, of course. So Mount Everest is obviously the tallest mountain in the world. And what you might not know is that at the very top, at the peak, the mineralogy, the rocks at the top, are actually ocean rocks. They were once at the bottom of the ocean, on the seabed, millions of years ago. And over those millions of years, through plate tectonics, that was pushed up to the point where it's at an elevation that basically we fly planes at, commercial aircraft. How does it do that? Well, at 4 millimeters per year, it's achieved that kind of accomplishment. So nature speaks loud. Nature gives us a good message. Nature tells us it's possible. So for me, I want to talk a little bit about a personal story beyond push-ups that has to do with more of my engagement with the broader community and the kind of impact I've been involved in there. And it all started with me basically spending a day picking up trash alongside a road. So I had seen in Facebook a post of a new group in Hanoi 2 years ago, founded by James Kendall, who's sitting right here in the third row, that was organizing cleanups in just neighborhoods to try and bring attention to some spots that were particularly not clean and unsightful, and try to beautify them. And I said, hey, well, my first reaction was, why didn't I think of that? I've taught environmental science, I'm this environmental guy, and I've seen these trash piles. I drive to work, and I've seen them in neighborhoods, unfortunately, and even on trips into the countryside, I've seen them in the rice paddies. That's heartbreaking for me to see, but I didn't think of it. So I said to myself, well, of course, I'm going to join this. I have to join this. This is a good thing. So I went to my first cleanup, and I joined. It was about 20 volunteers. We were on the north side of the city, and it was a hot day, and we spent the morning and the afternoon getting to know each other, getting to know the neighbors, and basically rolling up our sleeves, getting dirty, jumping into it, and beautifying one corner of Hanoi. You'd be amazed at the people driving by going, well, some of the people were just staring like, what are these people doing? You know, it's half foreigners, half Vietnamese. Well, what are these people? But other people, especially in the community, were just, thank you so much. This is a wonderful thing that you're doing. This is wonderful. If you had told me that day that 2 years later I'd be the general director of this organization, I would have said, I don't think so. I don't have time for that. But I stayed involved, and I stayed engaged. And there's a few things that kept me hooked. One was the passion of people. You know, when you study environmental science like I did 25, 30 years ago, you kind of feel like it's you against the world, because people, we all go on with our daily lives, but those poor people that have to study environmental science, they have all these problems in their mind, and they're seeing them all around them all the time. It's depressing. But here I was surrounded by people that perhaps they didn't have, my level of education or experience, but everybody's passionate, everybody wants to see change, and it actually gave me new life and gave me new hope. So I said, I have to stay with this. I have to help this along. And also with my little bit of teaching in management, I said, we can have more impact. We can reach more people if we just apply a few organizational kind of best practices, benchmark practices. If we do that, I know this can go much further. So I stayed with it, and basically today we're kind of at a milestone. We've one of the other helpers, actually co-writers of business plan. We just finished a 40-page business plan that's helping to launch us into the end of 2018 with three nonprofit focuses or projects. So we're going to deal with land, air, and water. And we're going to have 4 businesses, social businesses, that support all the work that we're doing. So we're on the precipice. We're ready to kind of jump into a whole new level of the work we're doing at Keep Hanoi Clean. And I'm very excited about where we're going. And it all started with a very small step. If I can have your permission, I'd like to play like a 1-minute video of one of our cleanups. So my message to you today, my invitation is, if you want to change something in the world, be kind to yourself. Think of that small first step that you could possibly take, and then take it. Thank you.